of sales and customers' confidence. Okay, so we don't want to lose our customers. So think about Flipkart.com, think about Lazada.com.sg, right? Think about Amazon.com, Microsoft.com for that matter. So all these websites are always running. They don't go down. Why? You always have a load balancer. Behind the load balancer, you have multiple front-end machines. At any given point of time, even if one goes down, the other one is always available for you to offer its services. That's point number one. Point number two, website performance. While the performance of placing order is normally satisfactory, browsing or searching pages with many items listed is reported being sluggish. Now, we haven't discussed this in this particular chapter because this again comes into your application architecture. But let me give you a heads up. How many of you have heard about something called Redis? Anybody who heard this term before?
Yeah, we use Redis.
Yeah, what is Redis, Vijay?
It's a memory cache which we use today, and in our use case, we use it for our APIs.
Yeah. So Redis can also play a role of cache for your database. Example, I'm just bringing up a browser here. And then I'll just type Azure Redis, nothing else. Click on images. See, so basically you have your front end, a website, a cache layer, and then your database. Frequently accessed information would be available to you in your cache. So this is a simple diagram that you can think of. This improves the performance as well as the availability of your database itself. So this is something to be considered. We haven't discussed this. I'm just giving you a kind of spoiler. We will discuss this tomorrow when we look into the application architecture. Okay, Redis is something to look out for. Then we are, point number 3, we are talking about security. If Redis is not something that we can think of, what can improve the performance? This is bringing an extra cache layer. So my question to you is, think of it in a general fashion. Let's say we don't have budget for Redis, okay? So for sluggishness, think about your laptop is slow. What do you do when your laptop is slow, guys? You have killed all the unwanted services, you have configured your MS config, you have done everything, but still slow. What will you do? Laptop.
Reboot.
Still doesn't fix. It's still slow.
In the hardware.
Wonderful. Which hardware would you?
RAM or store, like whatever. RAM actually. RAM, CPU, whatever, like, or storage, depends. Condition.
Most of the time, when you talk about databases, CPU is never of a challenge. Believe me when I say this.
Okay. Then storage.
To give. No, memory. Storage comes into play when your memory is overcommitted. For example, you might have heard about terms like, what is the term they use? I forgot. Virtual memory, not virtual memory. So basically, it's going to convert your C drive into a location wherein you can export some of the unused memory pages to the C drive and then make some room for your memory in physical RAM and then give it to your application. I forgot the term. I know the tech. I remember the technology. Let me search. I think it's called virtual memory. I think it's called virtual memory. Yep, Windows virtual memory. 2.5 times of your actual physical memory. That's what you do. Anybody who have done this before? Let me just look if it's called virtual memory or not. There is another term as well.
Phone.
Call it virtual
phone. There are some options, right? In some phone wherein you can convert your 12 GB to 24 or double the GB actually by converting some of your storage as a memory.
Exactly. So what it does is, not so frequently used memory pages, they move it to your hard drive. That way your actual physical memory has free space. Then you can give this free space to the application which is demanding. I think this is the one. Okay, it's still called virtual memory, so my memory is good. Linux calls it as swap as well. Okay, so this is the one that I was talking about. Paging is the concept that we use. Everybody following me so far? So what I'm trying to highlight here is, if there is no budget for Redis, what can be done to improve the website performance from the database front? Just improving the amount of hardware resources will also fix the problem. Everybody following me so far? So RAM, which is physical resources. In our case, we're talking about right sizing, because when you're going with your selection of your database, you have to just make sure you have enough resources. So right sizing can also fix the problem. Now let's talk about the third point, security. Tailwind Traders is very concerned about personal or financial information stored in the database being exposed. In addition to implementing proper security measures, the security team needs to verify that industry standard best practices are implemented when possible. Now pause here. What all features did we discuss? Go back to the whiteboard. Scroll down to the end. We said
data masking. Data masking is needed.
Wonderful. That's a very good point. For example, that information, I don't want you to have details about all 16 digits, right? So I just want to show you maybe the last 4 digits. That's why when you contact few banks here in Singapore, not just in Singapore, any other banks throughout the world, they'll just ask you to confirm the last 4 digits, because they don't have the complete 16 digits with them. So that's your data masking. I think I would have given you the screenshot in the whiteboard as well. So let me go back here to the whiteboard. Let's scroll down to the bottom. That's data masking. So definitely, I look forward for data masking. But apart from data masking, how are we encrypting the data at rest? What feature are we talking?
Data encryption or storage encryption?
That's from the storage size. We call that as SSC. We are not talking about SSC. We are talking about data.
Okay. TDE.
TDE, very good. Transparent data encryption. See here, data masking is this particular screenshot. How do I mask credit card information? How do I mask your email address or any personal information? This is important, right? And then we have talked about TDE. I can think of implementing TDE. Or I can go with always encrypted option to divide the responsibilities, to make sure that only the data owners have access to the data, but not the person who's managing the data. I gave you the UOB example, remember? One of my friends was working for UOB. He says, hey, they can get all your credit card transaction information, which is not right? So this is where your always encrypted option comes handy. So which divides the responsibilities. If you're managing the database, you're limited to do operational work, but not accessing the tables themselves, not running the query and fetching the data itself. This is where the private keys come into play. So again, your CMKs and CEKs are playing an important role. So that's where the KB article link comes handy. So with respect to security, we will bring all these things: TDE, data masking, data in transit encryption through SSL or TLS certificates, and always encrypted. Put everything there. And how many of you have heard about firewall for databases? Have you heard about firewall for databases? We discussed about firewalls for virtual networks, NSGs for subnets. But my question is, have you heard about firewall for database?
We've done something using Palo Alto in AWS.
Okay, so that's again external. Have you? Do you know that Microsoft SQL has an integrated firewall to it? Like your operating system has its own firewall. Your database also has a firewall.
Talking about NSG or what? Like, because you need to provide which IP can access the database or something like that. It comes built in, right, with the Azure
firewall. Yeah. NSGs and everything is for network. I'm not talking about network firewall. I'm talking about firewall which comes with the SQL server.
Okay, no, I haven't heard.
Okay, so that's something that can also be configured. Configure Windows Firewall for SQL Server. What is this? Let me check if this is the one. If not, I'll give you. I think I should have bookmarked it somewhere. This is the point where we just said they are using Palo Alto networks. Again, this is from the Windows front. The firewall is from the Windows front, Microsoft Management Console. But let me see if I can share that document where I've read about firewall for the database itself. Basically talking about implementing restrictions for your tables. Okay, so that's a good feature as well. That can also be considered. So now that we have all the points, let's jump into the tasks. Design a database solution. Your design should include authorization, authentication, pricing, performance, and high availability. So we have to bring in these 5 factors. Authorization, authentication, pricing, performance, high availability. So high availability, let's start bottoms up. High availability. Which business tier would you implement? Sorry, which service tier, not business tier. Which service tier would you implement?
Business critical.
Always on availability group. Remember, where is my whiteboard? So you're talking about this. Out of these 3 options, which one would you choose? General purpose, business critical, hyperscale. I mean, if I were you, my choice would be between business critical and hyperscale. Point number 1, why I would say so is because here there is no reserved instance for the failover, which means every time I want to do a failover, I have to first look out for a server with enough resources. Then I have to spin up my database. Then I have to attach my database files. This is time consuming. But if budget is of constraint, right? If budget is your constraint, which means it's like a soft breaker, that's what a constraint is, which stops your project to run smoothly, then I would go with the general purpose. But in this scenario, we haven't been limited with the budget, but we were emphasized on the security. So one of these 2 options would come handy. Now, with respect to cost, between these 2, I would say business critical is much cheaper than the hyperscale because of the number of page servers and your, what do you call it, cache components compared with your business critical service tier. So for me, this is good enough, where I have multiple replicas available and then the failover is instantaneous. At any given point of time, the end user wouldn't even know that there was a failover of the database behind the screen. Give me a thumbs up if you're following me. So when Vijay says business critical, this is the point he's highlighting. Any business critical applications where OLTP, low latency, or IO intensive workloads come into play, this one goes handy. So for high availability, always on availability group is available to us with business critical service tier. Performance. What were the 2 points which we discussed for performance? How can I increase the performance of my database? 2 options. Say if cost is not a constraint, go for Redis per cache. If cost is a constraint, then right size your database, which means give more memory. That will automatically take care of it. Pricing. So for pricing, what I want you to understand is which one of these 3 options would you select? Scroll up. SQL databases, managed instance, SQL virtual machines. Anybody using any one of these service offerings? Just launch pricing calculator. Check which one is cheaper. Again, another point to consider is the size of the database itself. So let's try the pricing calculator one more time. I go here. Pricing calculator. Go back at the top, remove storage account, select database. Your SQL database. View. Service tier, general purpose, business critical, hyperscale, standard, vCore model, licensing. And then if you see here, pay-as-you-go model, it's going to cost you about 224 with compute reserved, and SQL service licensing is 145. So total it's going to cost you about $368. The moment I change it to business critical, 991. Okay, rather than going with single database, general purpose, I'll go with serverless. So serverless, drastic change again. Serverless is where we said under vCore, you can go full compute tier, which means the virtual machines will be deployed for you, or serverless, wherein the virtual machines are deployed only when needed. So again, the price is different. So it says upfront cost is 0, monthly cost an average of 5.31 for data retention. But if you see, we haven't checked the estimated monthly cost for the earlier one. It's a huge number. Again, I'm just going with the default values here. You would change this depending upon your requirement. Now, let's go with a different region, because not all types of databases are available to you in all regions. So Elastic Pool, which means group of service with compute and license, it's going to cost you per month $2,000. So what I wanted to show you was, this was the Azure SQL database. Let's add managed instance. Let's add SQL on a virtual machine. Managed instance. Remember, managed instance was limited to 16 GB only. Was it 16 terabyte or 16 GB? So I've added it. Let's look into the cost for Azure managed instance. Managed instance, if I go with LRS, standard, single instance, $1,400. It is more than what we saw for your Azure single database. So basically what I'm trying to highlight here is, from this particular page, you will decide which one of those three options works for you. Do you want to go with Azure SQL database? Do you want to go with Azure managed instance? Or do you want to go with Azure SQL on a virtual machine, which is going to be like infrastructure as a service? Azure Cache for Redis, which is to accelerate your application behavior. This is what I said. If cost is not a constraint, you can think of it. From my experience or understanding, I would go with Azure SQL database. Two reasons. One, it's a platform as a service offering, which means I don't have to worry about the operating system and the application itself. And option number two, it allows me to go as big as 100 terabyte, whereas managed instance is limited to 16 terabyte only. And option number three, it gives all the important features. I know not all features are available, but all the important features which are needed with respect to high availability and scalability are available to me. So would you agree to go with SQL database, or anyone who wants to go with managed instance versus Azure SQL on virtual machine? Which one do you think is the best fit in our scenario?
There's also a point over there that says the private IP address supports with Azure Private Link. That's not in the other two options. And from a security point of view, in the use case, I think that will be a critical to consider.
So, which means when we have talked about private endpoints this afternoon, can I use private endpoints with my database? Definitely. It's a platform as a service, right? There are certain Azure, not all platform as a service offerings supports it. So the first question that you need to understand is private endpoint is also an extra cost. So do you want to?
Yeah.
Again, security versus flexibility. Which one is your customer opting for? And believe me, at least in India and Southeast Asia, the money factor plays a very important role. So I got your point for security. But again, I can achieve security with Azure SQL databases as well, with implementation of a firewall. Then I can implement Azure SQL database also with private endpoints.
Okay.
Yeah. So we will come back here. Let's say for now, we would just add a point. For pricing perspective, we will go with Azure SQL DB. Authentication or authorization. We did talk about authentication, if you remember. Let me go back to the deck. So whenever you hear the term authentication and authorization, it's always been about permissions. And we said in one slide, if I'm not wrong, we can allow different user accounts. Where is it? Where is that slide? This one. Which one would you recommend? So they said how you want to authenticate the users, right? Let me change the view. So here on this slide, we are pointing two types of authentication that we support. Azure Active Directory authentication and SQL Server authentication. Have you observed SQL Server authentication through local user accounts like SA? Anybody who has used that SA account? You would log in with an SA account on the database instance. You will create an account and then you will use that account to manage your databases. Anybody who did that before?
Yeah.
And then Azure Active Directory is basically your Windows integrated authentication as well, right? So we are adding your SQL database to Azure Active Directory, and then you're picking an account from your user groups and giving permissions on your SQL database.
So SQL Server authentication has been blocked in our organization now. So
we have to go with Azure AD.
Yeah. So we have to go with Azure AD. That's the protocol.
With an existing experience, we can say, hey, for authentication, we will integrate Azure AD and configure AZ-AD authentication. And implement managed identities. We will talk a little bit on managed identities tomorrow when you are looking into the IAM section. But remember, not always a user needs to interact with the database. Sometimes it is the application which is directly accessing your database tables and fetching the information required, right? So if you remember the diagram as well, here on the whiteboard, it is not the user, it is the application that you see. So here, application trying to reach to your primary replica, which means your database server. How is this application accessing this? The application itself requires an identity, right? This is where the concept of managed identity comes into play, which we will talk tomorrow, okay? Which is where you also have the concept of service principal coming into play, which I partially answered yesterday. So let me just bring you guys up here. Everybody following me so far? Authentication, we are doing it with Azure SQL databases. Then Authorization is where we are talking about implementation of security, because authorization has always been about permissions. How I'm gonna allow somebody to go ahead and access it. So let me stop. Oh, sorry. I wanted to come out of the presenter mode, but I think I've closed the session. So just give me a minute. And with doing this. Okay. It's bad. Let me just press escape. Come on. Is my screen visible, guys? Thanks, Vijay. Share it. So now let's talk about the notepad. So pricing, we are going with Azure SQL DB. Performance, two options. One, we are talking about Redis for cache, and two, we are talking about right sizing your database, because that will also resolve the performance issues. And then whenever we are talking about right sizing, remember multi-region. This was one point they have highlighted. Hey, for now, the application is deployed in two regions, but in future they will grow. So this is where we have talked about the scaling strategy. Now here from this deck, which option do you think fits the bill? We have to consider that as well. For multiple regions.
Option 2.
Yep. So sharding can be considered as a point that we will add. Sharding will be considered. And then for organization, this is where we are talking about leveraging server level firewall plus RBAC plus the security features. So whenever we are talking about security features, we have talked about dynamic data masking. We've talked about what else? Always encrypted. And then we have talked about TLS or SSL's implementation and private endpoints, PE. So this is what we have. So all 5 points covered. Any questions, guys? So these are the things. This is how we will get started. Now keep in mind, in real time, it's not a half an hour thing to get everything into one place. So you will have a continuous loop of interviews with these stakeholders. And believe me, just to collect the requirements itself will take approximately 6 to 9 days, which means every day spending 2 to 3 hours at least with your client. And once you have the requirements, then you would create your blueprint, right? So collecting the requirements and then coming up with a conceptual design itself will take approximately a week's time, what I've seen from the field experiences. Give me a thumbs up if you agree with that point. Anybody who has been part of these discussions before can come forward and share your experience.
I've had experience where our clients are usually the business units who've been running their applications on-prem and on your very legacy infrastructure, and they want us to bring them on the cloud. So they don't even have any idea that how to run the cloud. So it's kind of everything is on us to basically decide how the application can fit into cloud architecture.
Makes sense. Now, did you guys use any CASB solution there, like Cloud Access Security Brokers, to understand which application can be migrated, or Did you guys use any assessment tools?
We do have in-house tools to assess, but we do have an in-house cloud engineering team called Public Cloud Services who works with us and guide us through how this can. So it's just not just one person. I will say I'm just one of the people over there, but it's a
I
really
know.
big.
Yeah, it's a big process that is aligned just in stage one. Assessing itself is a time-consuming task, and then, like I said, as an architect, you should have multiple options. If it's a cost, hey, go with this. If it's a security, go with this. If it's a flexibility, go with this. You're getting my point. For example, on the notepad, when we are talking about performance, we had two options. If cost is not a constraint, we are saying go with Redis because Redis has is a proven technology wherein it improves the performance of your application by acting or creating a cache layer. This is like for the front end how you have CDN. This is for the back end. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that should be it for today. What I will do is I will stop sharing here now. I will update that Word document that I have, and I will give you my logical diagram for this discussion with those 5 points, and then we go forward. Okay. So, I'll share that link in some time with you guys. So that should be it. Any other questions, folks, before we call it a day? So great discussions with case study number 1. I really appreciate people coming forward and putting out their points. And thanks for participating in case study number 2, sharing your points. I can sense this. I know this is new to you for most of you guys because I have few folks who are new to Azure completely. But believe me, as an architect, you just need to learn how to speak up and then how to fight for your solution. You just need to justify the business needs. As long as you're meeting the requirements and able to bring them over to your blueprint, it all stands good. So because we have less than 15 people, we participated in a single group discussion like we did yesterday. But generally, when I have a larger class, it will be multiple teams, and then 2 teams will compete. That's really nice because sometimes the solutions are not same, right? The solutions would be different. So yep. Thank you so much for day 2. Give me about 5 more minutes, 5 to 7 minutes to update that Word document. And I think it could be because of a security feature. I'm not receiving emails from external. Okay, I've received Vijay Chauhan, external, use case 1, case 3. Okay, let me just open that. Vijay, Westpac. Wow. I visited Westpac to deliver training when I was with VMware. Let me search the AN and I forgot. But
Was it with the Tansu or?
no, it was for VRA. I realized because you guys heavily use VMware products, I was scared to teach them VMware.
We got everything. From mainframes to everything we got.
Yeah.
It's a 200 years old bank, so you can imagine.
Yeah. I don't know if it was 4 seasons, but there is a very good 5-star hotel near the beach line, which is away from your Westpac bank. So basically, the MRT is very close by, the local train.
Mm-hmm.
Is it still the same office?
It's still there, 275 Kent Street.
Yeah. But wonderful place. The moment you come out, opposite there is Vietnamese food place, and then go a little bit towards the station. I remember there was a kebab center, a Turkish guy. Yeah, I miss that food.
You should come back.
I wish the travel's open back to normal like pre-COVID days. So
we do work with Microsoft guys every day. Sayan coach is our point of contact with a couple of people who come to us, and it's like a team who like we can ask them questions, any design questions, and we can bring them in. They can they participate in the. So the question you asked me earlier, what the tools you have? To be very honest, the tool I have is Microsoft because they're just like one email away from us. and they send us everything that how we have to do. They even jump in the calls and get us, things over the line.
Makes sense. Yeah. But yeah, education and the post sales work very closely. That's how we all stay updated, like what's really happening on the field, so that we can give the best of knowledge to our learners as well.
100%.
So give me like a few more minutes. I'm updating the document. Once I have it over, I'll share it with you folks. I've included both the options with ready for cache as well, and then highlighted the pointers which we have collected from both the parties. And the document is updated. Let me just save it. Okay, 51673 is uploaded. I'm posting the link in the chat box. Can anybody please download that and confirm if it is working as expected? Rishi, I'll help you with that question. Just give me a minute. Download the whiteboard. Can anybody please confirm if you're able to download that? So we are going to talk about recovery on day 4. So we have that covered. Now I have a few questions for you. When you say virtual in the OS layer, the first question would be what type of workload are we talking about? So is it a virtual machine in the cloud, or is it a virtual machine running in your on-premise environment? On which platform is it running? Is it AWS?
I'm talking about the overall Azure solution, not the on-prem. So if we have a bundled package with Azure, including OS database and the application. So in this case, how do we plan the overall SLA?
Yeah, definitely. Hold on to this question for day 4, but for now, just for your reference, I'm just going to give you Azure Site Recovery Introductory document, okay? Because this solution gives you the end-to-end deployment solution for you to implement your BCDR strategy, okay? Business continuity and disaster recovery, which includes both your backups and DR solution. And not limited to just operating system, but any type of application, including your databases. So let me just give you this, and then we go forward. Promotion says I'm not able to see in the doc. Why?
I'm saying only that double S. That's it. The doc is blank.
Don't tell me. Let me just open that here.
Same as with me. I can see SS. That's all.
Why?
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. My bad. Don't tell me I have. Rather than clicking on Control S, I think what I've done, I would have selected all and then typed yes. So how do I recover my old file?
Control Z doesn't work. You close the file or what?
I close the file because you can't upload it to the cloud when the file is open. Oh my god. I think that's what have happened. I know it's autosave is on, but you have the whole habit of pressing that Control S, right? And then I will have closed it. Now it is just showing. Okay, no. Okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna download the old file, update it again, and I'm gonna upload it again. Hold on.
Just check for version history. It's
It's 7.3. Now the challenge is I'm still getting the same old file, even for. The only thing that you might miss is the writings on the Word document which we did during the discussion. I'm not recovering that, so I'm just going to delete this. And okay, that's gone. What? Okay, I have the solutions in place, but the only thing that you'll be missing is the writings which we did during the discussion. My bad, guys. So I don't know how I simply missed that thing. But yeah, rest of the stuff I have backed up copy, my original copy. I've just copied it over. Let me save this time this properly and let me share it with you. Okay, now I have everything. Control S properly. I want you all try this link.
Same, right? Or changed?
Change.
Same.
Is it still showing SS?
For me, it was, yeah.
Why?
Others, not sure.
No, let me share my screen. I'll show it to you, guys.
Just rename the document, maybe, I don't know. Others are getting it, or they are also seeing SS this time?
Okay. Let me share my screen so that you guys can follow what I'm doing. So, share. It should not be SS. Can others confirm? Babita says yes, which means something is wrong with the upload process. Okay. Check this out, people. I hope you're able to see my screen. So this is the document which I'm uploading, design -5 and 673. And if you see, all the diagrams, all the points are in place. I'm just gonna close this, reopen it in front of you. This is the location, desktop 51673. Refresh, F5, done. Now open it again. I'm opening it again. So the file is good. There is no problem with that. Now I'm gonna go to the cloud. Go to the cloud. I'm just gonna say container, upload, browse files from desktop from the same folder, 7673 design. I want to override any file which is already there. Click upload. It's done. Now when I click on the link, it will give me a link. Let me download that file, okay? I'm just gonna go in private, hit enter. That's downloading the file here, which is a good sign. Now when I open the file, let's see, it's trying to open on the desktop. Yep, there you go, it's working.
Yeah, works.
Why was it giving the old file then?
I just opened private tab. Maybe it is taking from session or sachet. So I just opened a private window and then try downloading the link.
By that. So I just show you guys that it is a new file, which means there is content inside it. Okay. Try the in private window. I'll just type that in the chat box. Others, please confirm. Try the incognito or in private window and paste this link. Okay, that should be it for today, guys. It's 4:44. So take good rest. Tomorrow we will start again with a quick recap. 9:05 we start our day as usual, and then we go forward.
Thanks, Amit. Thanks, all.
Thanks, Roshan. Thanks, Vijay, and thank you, others, and Babita, for your participation. Others, don't feel shy. As and when the day passes by, we are seeing more participants, more people coming forward to speak up. Break that barrier. Bring your questions. Participate in the discussions. Thank you so much for day 2. Tomorrow, we will start with a quick recap. Tomorrow is all about 3 things. A little bit of monitoring, applications, IAM. We will start with application, then IAM, then storage integration, and finally we will talk about which learning part for tomorrow. Okay, I think my screen is still being shared. I gave you this link yesterday, right? So go back to that link. Let me open that. What happened? Why did it go blank on me? Okay, tools. Right. So this is the link which I shared yesterday with you all. I'm going to share it again. So if you look at the learning path, we covered governance and compute yesterday. We covered data storage, non-relational and relational today. Data integration is where we will talk about solutions like Databricks, Azure Data Lake, Synapse, all these. Then we have Azure Data Explorer. All these solutions we will talk a quick high-level bird's-eye view of introduction to these solutions, so that as an architect you can consider these. So we will discuss this lesson tomorrow. But actually for day 3, it's going to be application architecture, where we're going to talk about queues, how to design your application in a better way, integration with Azure Active Directory. We would look into that. Then we would look into your IAM concepts, which is where complete Azure Active Directory for about 35 minutes to 40 minutes. Then we're going to talk about your monitoring. So these are the 3 modules, plus the module from today, which is data integration. Data integration is a small module, requires approximately 15 to 20 minutes of lecture time. Does this make sense, Lincoln? So this is the part that you need to look into tomorrow. Just refresh your skill sets, where it will talk about security principles, managed identities, queues, all that in application architecture. Just give me a thumbs up if this is making sense, if you're still following me. Thank you, Babita. Thank you, others. Thanks, Asro. Thanks, Ahmad and Roshan. That should be it. It will take approximately 45 minutes to 55 minutes for me to reach home. I'll start. It's a very beautiful day here in Singapore. It's raining. It's cold. And enjoy your evening, guys. See you tomorrow. Have a good one, people.